obviously welcoming everyone to the City of Port Adelaide Enfield first. And just for those that don't know about the city, it's basically 92 square kilometres, so it's a fairly large region. It's got a population of approximately 124,000 people. We've got approximately 8,000 businesses, and there's quite a few exciting things that are actually happening in the region at the moment. I've got a case study I want to share with you today, which is one that I was involved with at Wattle Range Council. So for those that don't know, Wattle Range Council is based down the southeast of South Australia. It runs from Beachport right through to the Victorian border. So it's quite a large council area, has a heavy agricultural background, has also the wine region of the Coonawarra as well. So it's a very productive area, and it's actually ranked #1 in Australia for net primary production. So that was our little flag that we used to hold up. The case study that I want to talk about today is the attraction of Midfield meats into the council region. So I'll get to that in a sec, but I just thought it was just worth just putting a couple of dot points up early about what council's role is in terms of economic development, because we know that we've got a lot of competing demands in terms of economic development, and it's really no one's job alone. It's a role of having stakeholders engaged and lines of communication open. So when I talk about economic development from a council perspective, we are a facilitator. And that to me is the key. It's being able to communicate, it's being at that grassroots level of business, and it's being able to work through, it's being able to almost take business through the jungle of process and actually achieve outcomes. So I've just put a couple of dot points up there, things like creating partnerships with businesses, identifying potential barriers and growth, attracting new businesses to the region. Again, it's a key one. We all, as individual councils, have our marketing departments, and we're all there to promote our region, but it's a key factor of economic development in actually putting out there to say that we're open to business, we want business, and actually identifying what our competitive advantage is for a business to be in this region. Enhancing and growing the tourism industry. Again, it's not relevant to every council in the state, but it's a key one. At the end of the day, visitation, people through our region, it's dollars into businesses. Encouraging and facilitating population growth. Again, the role of this is we know that from an urban design and an urban planning perspective, we're often talking about residential developments, but the link between economic development, the link between having the appropriate shops to source them, having the right population base and density, they're all questions that come back to economic development as well. Obviously providing services and infrastructure to residents and businesses. So if you spoke to the average community, council's role is picking up the bin and mowing the curb. Zoning. So again, it's a key one that we often overlook. So zoning is often seen as the urban planner's role, but it's key that there is an economic development focus in it as well, because we've got to be looking at our city longer term. We can't just look at it similar to a state government analogy, which is the next election campaign. We've got to be planning further and further ahead and start looking at where our populations are going to be. Obviously promotion and marketing of the region, developing export opportunities. So again, that's a key one. It was a key one at Wattle Range too. We had a lot of export that was coming out of that area. And I think the last one, which is really important there, is guiding businesses through the process. So I'll talk about this in the case study, but state government and a lot of the levels of bureaucracy make it very, very difficult for business to operate. So we can play an absolute key role in being that broker, if you like, or that facilitator between business and them getting to their outcome. So as I mentioned, the case study I want to talk about today is Midfield meats. But before starting that, how do we get to knowing what businesses we should attract? Where's the starting point? So what I've done with this is just put a few dot points down here, but obviously an economic development strategy is the starting point. It's your Bible in terms of where you're going to go as an organisation and what it is you want to do. But sitting underneath that, there's a whole range of different projects that need to occur. And I think the first one for me is actually identifying the appropriate assets within the council area. So what is it we've got? Where's our vacant land? Where are, for example, buildings that may have been used 10, 20 years ago that are sitting vacant? What opportunities actually exist there? What have we got that's a point of difference that isn't anywhere else that we can attract a business, whether it's from interstate, overseas, or it's a new business starting up? Obviously, when we start doing this sort of audit, there's consideration to things like noise, pollution, our residential sprawl, truck and transport access, and obviously EPA issues. So again, when you're doing that audit, have a look at what's sitting around it. Then it's really key to have a look at the region in terms of a SWOT. You know, what sort of industries, what sort of business do we actually want to attract to the region? Until you can answer that question, a lot of the times we're actually just stabbing in the dark and we're waiting for people to knock on our door. But if you can physically take the time, understand what your strengths are, understand what industries are a good fit to that, you can actually start to go out and target, and that's what this should be about. And the last one there is also understanding what businesses currently exist, because what we don't want to do is have businesses that cannibalise other businesses that are already there. What's there to supplement it? What's there that can work with what we've got? What's there to create new opportunities as well? So, matching business with opportunity, I think that's really the key to this. So, through a range of conversations, we came across an organisation out of Warrnambool called Midfield Meats. So they're actually an abattoir. They buy a lot of meat out of South Australia. They also buy out of New South Wales and Victoria. So they're the largest privately owned abattoir and meat business in Australia. Just in discussions, they were looking to move to South Australia as a potential site to create a new powdered milk manufacturing site. They were currently in Warrnambool, as I mentioned, but their site has now literally enclosed in with residential around them. They were having massive problems with the council about any development that they were looking to do, and they were pretty much at their wits' end. So when they came into South Australia and they were looking at some potential opportunities, it was actually a bit of a breath of fresh air when the council actually said to them, we actually want you here, and actually opening that conversation. They were used to council saying, no, you can't do that, no, you can't expand, you've got problems with noise, pollution and everything else. So, we actually arranged an initial discussion on site at a location that we'd identified. The location was the old Sapphire site. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with Penola, but it's the old chip factory out on the Penola Road between Penola and Mount Gambier. So the meeting was arranged, and also at that first meeting, it was key. We had some key players. So we had PIRSA there, and we also had one of the planning team as well. So up front, let's get everyone on the same page that we're actually talking about what can be done. So instead of one or two people being there and actually just discussing it and kicking the tyres, let's throw it round and let's actually have some real meaningful discussion that we can send these people away with some real ideas about where it's going. So first meeting went really well. Obviously they were very interested and they were going away to negotiate on the site. Obviously after that we had ongoing discussions with Midfield, and that was, for example, even things like us finding them information on things like power, finding them out information on water use, finding them out information on underground water and discharge. So these were all things that in a lot of businesses you'd sort of turn around and say, oh, you go away and do that yourself. But we wanted this business there. It was a $60 million development with potentially up to 140 jobs associated with it. So these things don't come along all the time. So if you don't proactively manage it, it's going to go away. And I think it's critical there that we also started conversations very early in the piece. This was before they'd actually purchased the site with both DIPT and EPA. I've got to be careful because there's a camera there, but I would strongly urge, if you've got any of these issues and you're dealing with those state government departments, the earlier you can get those involved, the better it's going to be. So, Midfields have basically come to us and said, yeah, this is all looking great. We like the site, it's got everything we want, it's close to the vicinity of milk production, and this is the plans that we've got for the site. So as I mentioned, $60 million development, 120 new jobs, and again, it's a pretty major project. So it's the sort of project that obviously normally sits under the state's major projects category, and yeah, from a normal perspective, probably wouldn't go through council. Midfield made the decision to run it through council and not major projects. That was because they had the belief in council that we wanted the business to be there, we were going to work with them, and whilst they appreciate that we weren't going to say yes to everything that they wanted, they had a commitment that we were going to work with them. And working with them doesn't mean that we're going to roll over and we're going to do anything outside of the box of approval. What it means is if we hit a roadblock, we're going to try and find a solution and work through it with them. So the deal was done, they bought the site. They then made the commitment to obviously build a state-of-the-art milk processing plant. So it was on. Obviously from the first conversations we had, they made it very clear from the start that if this was going to go ahead, there was going to be some tight timelines. There's a lot of issues that determine the tight timelines. Put my teeth back in. But predominantly they are around creating contracts with milk processing plants and also getting equipment and machinery in. So for those that have got a planning background, this was a Category 3 development. So Category 3, normally when you're in economic development, you hear Category 3, you sort of go, yep, that's going to be nasty. No disrespect to any planners. And I used to manage the planning and building department down there, so that's all good. I get on with them well, so I can have a nab. But for those that don't know planning, Category 3, it actually requires significant consultation. So it's not the sort of process that we're talking about just putting a veranda up in your backyard. It's a process, and it has to then go through a DAP as well. So we sat down with the management team, we'd had these discussions, and they basically turned around to us and said, okay, so explain the process, which we did. We mapped out a case and said, if everything absolutely went to plan, we had no roadblocks, we had no issues with referrals, and it was all smooth, we could do it in 12 weeks. So I don't know, again, if anyone's had this with Cat 3s, but 12 weeks, if you said to most people, not even possible. So that was the challenge. So we mapped out the case and basically worked out exactly what we had to do. So one of the biggest time restrictions in Category 3 developments is the fact that you've got to do the consultation period. So instead of being on the back foot, what we actually tried to do was be really, really proactive with our community consultation. So what we actually did was, instead of just doing the ad in the paper, which we did because obviously you have to do that, Midfield actually ran a number of community consultation sessions in Penola where the managing director, key staff from their management team were physically in our visitor information centre. They had all the maps drawn out of what they were looking to do, and it was advertised out in the paper, which was basically saying, come along, hear what we want to do, come and ask us any questions. If you're a business, tell us about what you do, because we're building a site. We'd be interested to get your card and see how we can use you as a local contractor. If you're looking for work, drop us a card, because we're looking for 120 new people. So we came to the session, and as council, we were observers. We weren't involved in the discussions. We were literally there on the night. We provided the venue and just had an active role in listening. And they came. The place was full. People coming to say, I'm looking for a job, people to say, I'm an electrician, people that were there that were concerned about noise, someone that's concerned about the native frog, whatever it might have been. They all came in. We had enough of the management team there from Midfield that they were able to answer the questions. They were prepared. They knew the answers to what they were going to do with wastewater. They knew the answers of what they were going to do with noise. They knew the answers about when the plant would be operating, how many trucks would be coming in. So when people came in, they were able to sit face to face and actually get the answers straight from the management team or the managing director. So it was a great forum, very successful. The next stage is obviously the referral process. So again, from a planning perspective, it's probably best to put that this is the stage that can take a long time. This is where a referral goes to a particular agency for their consideration and for their feedback to come into it. So the two referrals that we had in this particular instance were EPA and DIPT. So they're both state government agencies that have a role to play, but they can also both be very difficult ones to deal with. And I'm going to put this out on the table because I think I'll put it down the bottom as a tip for new players. Find the right people in these departments. No disrespect, but there are people that just like to say no, and I've got to be honest, I'm going to probably get caught out here because I'm on the record, but if I'm ringing these departments and I get the wrong person, I hang up and I'll ring back an hour later and get the person I want. Because from an economic development perspective, you want to get the right people that are going to actually help the process. I know that sounds awful, but it makes your life easier. So, as I mentioned earlier in the piece, we started the referral process very early. We got DIPT, we got EPA involved from an early part of the project. So what that did, it made the process simpler. They were aware, they'd had the meetings with Midfields, and they knew what was on the table. So, as we were getting closer to our stage of calling the DAP meeting, we were able to have those discussions with the EPA and DIPTI and actually get our information back for our referrals. So we actually got the information back when we needed, and that again, that was critical to starting the process earlier. We had the DAP meeting called, so as people know, you've got to put the public notice out. People can then make a submission or basically make an announcement to say that they want to make a representation on the day. We had no representations for that development. So again, from a Category 3 perspective, it's pretty unusual. What it does is it shows the process. Because it was robust, because it was transparent, everyone had their opportunity to have their say. Those people that had concerns, they were actually addressed individually by the organisation as well. Also just worth noting that during that process, Midfield's also received a PIRSA grant as well. So that was obviously a help in terms of the actual development there. And it's probably just worth throwing in as well that during this whole process, I'd have to say the Minister was really good as well, so he actually came and did some site visits, so we were also really keen to have their involvement as well, obviously to assist with potentially getting grants and making sure that from a PIRSA and EPA perspective it might just help the process. And during that, interestingly enough, the Victorian Government were also lobbying very hard for Midfields not to be in Victoria and to do their Stage 1 production back in Warrnambool. So there's a whole lot of ducks and drakes going on, but what it showed is if you get the process right, you can actually attract these people from interstate and actually bring them here as well. So the reality of all this is we had the DAP meeting. The actual agenda item lasted for about 7 minutes. It was approved. And we met the target of actually getting their Cat 3 development through within 12 weeks. So it's possible. It can be done. But what it shows is from day one, you need to take the time, map it out, you need to talk with the business, you need to get the planners involved, you need to get the key state government agencies involved. When we send emails or we put information through to people, it's just a piece of paper. So if you're getting this and you're a planner and you're looking at this and going, no, that doesn't fit, that doesn't fit, that doesn't fit, it's very easy to say no. If you can engage that person, you can take them out on site, you can explain what they're looking to do, where there might have been a no on the form, there could be, no, you can't do that, but there's a possibility you could do it this way. So all of a sudden, instead of it taking a long period of time to do, it's something that can actually be done pragmatically. So the key learnings that I've got here is be bold, actively chase business. It's there. We know that the economy in South Australia is struggling at the moment, but there are a lot of businesses out there that are still doing really well. There are businesses out there that have money in the bank that are just not investing because they don't have the confidence. I've got that when dealing with sites and projects that involve multiple agencies or state government departments, bring them in from day one. Even if the project doesn't go, have the phone call with them, put it up on their agenda, make sure that the conversation's happening. Internal planning departments, they can make or break projects. So again, get your planning staff on board. And I think it's really key. I was fortunate at Wattle Range because I actually had the planning department report to me. So I was able to have those conversations with them. But in an organisation where that economic development and planning aren't together, build the relationship, take the time and actually have the regular meetings so that they know the conversations that you're having. Communication. Understand what the expectations of the business are and also make it really, really clear what it is that council can and can't do. Again, be transparent. It's not rocket science, but communication is the key. And the other one too is after the project's complete, stay in contact with the business because it's often a challenging one. In an economic development environment, we often spend all that time, we rush around, we do a job, we do it, and then we're racing off doing the next one. But on those bigger ones like this, it's worth just staying in touch. It could just be an email, it could just be a phone call. Just keep those lines of communication opening because you just never know when the next opportunity is going to come up or other contacts that they may have that could lead to another business. And I think the last one there is celebrate the successes of business because at the end of the day, by celebrating it and actually putting the message out there, we can actually influence business confidence. And that's what the state needs at the moment. It needs to see some of the successes and not just hear about the businesses that are struggling. So that was hopefully not gone over too long, but yeah, that's a bit of a snapshot of Midfield Meets.